All right, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for your patience today. And with BOE, running a little late. As always, I will start with our public safety numbers. As of today, homicides are down 28% from last year. Non-fatal shootings are down 39% from last year. Carjackings are down 15% from last year. Auto thefts are down 32% from last year. Violent crime is down 8%, and total property crime is down 14%. And as you hear me say consistently, we are sustaining that meaningful progress, and I want to extend my thanks to everyone in our public safety space, from BPD to MONSE, our community violence intervention workers, our partners on the legal side, everybody, our federal partners who is helping Baltimore to collectively drive down violence. Now, to our main focus for today, I'm thankful, as you can see, to be joined here by multiple members of my cabinet, particularly our Director of Emergency Management, Joy Henderson. They are here with me today because we're preparing for another few days of intense weather as the remnants of Hurricane Debbie, or Debbie Downer as we are calling her, makes its way up the East Coast. Following the severe impact of the storms over this past weekend, knowing that many people are still dealing with the fallout, we are not sparing any precautions as this next storm makes its way here. Right now, we're expecting the storm to hit Thursday afternoon, with the most intense portions happening later Thursday into Friday. But we all know with these storms that can change in the blink of an eye. I'm going to quickly go through all of the different actions that city government is taking and make sure that everyone hears directly from me the best practices to make sure you and your family are prepared. With the current forecast, we are expecting potential impacts to include flooding due to heavy rainfall, a possibility for tornadoes, gusty winds, tidal flooding, of course, and gale force winds over the waters. First, we've taken the steps to prepare a state of emergency declaration for the city. It's been drafted but have not signed it. We will just have that ready to go in the event that it is necessary later this week. This, of course, follows Governor Moore's leadership issuing a statewide state of preparedness declaration yesterday. Our emergency management team has been in close contact with the state and other partners to ensure a smooth coordination throughout the process and preparedness. Next, we have made the decision alongside Recreation Parks to cancel all outdoor permitted events, all outdoor recreation, and closing pools between Thursday and Friday, including the team pool party for Friday night. This includes all recreation activities, including summer camps. The teams are taking the steps to make direct outreach to families and to everyone who RSVP'd for Friday's canceled team pool party to ensure that they receive that news directly. Second, to take care of our neighbors facing housing insecurity, we are opening an emergency shelter led by MOHS for Friday and Saturday at Robert C. Marshall. Robert C. Marshall Rec Center will close early at 6 p.m. on Thursday to make way for that shelter. Outreach team will work throughout the remainder of the week to encourage those on the street to go to one of our existing shelters where beds are available. During the storm, street outreach team will continue to transport anyone still on the street to Robert C. Marshall, and we will also monitor the impact of storm damage as the storm progresses and have identified steps to quickly open any additional emergency shelter locations if needed. We saw the impact of days-long power outages last weekend, and we want to make sure we're exploring every option if families are put in that situation again. Our hope is that this will not escalate to that point, but we have to be prepared regardless. Third, we are making sandbags available with extended distribution today from 3 to 8 p.m. at the following locations: Fells Point at Thames and Broadway, Irvington at the Steel Meadow Church at 5110 Frederick Avenue, at the Merville High School at Hillen and 35th. And lastly, make sure you are taking necessary steps to prepare yourself and your family and neighbors, your property for the storm. There's a bunch of things you can do to prepare, and now is the time to do them. Not on Thursday when the storm is already hitting us. Do it today. For example, make sure that you have a personal emergency kit available. Our emergency management experts suggest that includes water, 1 gallon per person per day for drinking and for sanitation. Food, at least several days supply of non-perishable food, battery, non-power or hand crank radio, and NOAA weather radio with tone alert, flashlight and batteries, first aid kit, and even extra batteries, and a whistle to signal for help. For older adults or people with chronic illness, make sure that you have supplies to manage any health conditions, including backup plans to maintain any medications, especially if they require refrigeration. At your home, secure outdoor belongings on stoops, patios, decks, and yards. I'll be moving my furniture in this evening. If you see flooding, and we have to say this every time, please do not drive through standing or moving water. It's almost always deeper or more swiftly moving than you think or it seems. And that is one of the easiest ways to find yourself in need of help or in a dangerous water rescue situation. We know that there's particular places in the city that flood. We will be looking to probably close those down, so you won't be able to go over North Point and get stuck, because we're going to try to prevent you from doing that. But anywhere you see standing water, do not drive through it for your safety. Half of flood fatalities happen because people try to drive through hazardous flood waters rather than avoid them. If you see a traffic control barrier in the road, don't drive around it, don't move it. It's put there for a reason. Just take another route. The next highest percentage of flood-related deaths is due to walking into or near flood water. So remember the phrase, turn around, don't drown. If you have a generator, do not use the generator inside of your home, garage, basement, crawl space, or any enclosed area. Keep them outside of your living spaces and away from doors and windows and vents that could allow carbon monoxide to come inside. Carbon monoxide, as we know, is an odorless gas that kills silently. Place your generators also 20 feet away from your home, downwind from any open doors, windows, and vents, and turn the generator off before you refuel, and let it sit there for at least 15 minutes. And lastly, we know that there's still storm debris on the ground from last weekend. We are concerned about rain washing leaves, sticks, branches, and other things into our storm drains, backing them up and causing localized flooding. DPW's crews have taken preparedness actions to clear storm drains before the expected winds and heavy rains arise. If you have a storm drain around your property where you can see debris, please take action to clear it or call 311 to help us identify locations so that we can prevent flooding. Leaves and litter are a source of inlet stormage blockage. Sweeping leaves and trash from sidewalks, alleyways, and gutters will keep this material out of the drains, and please do not park on top of storm drain inlets. If you experience a basement sewage backup, please call 311 to report that immediately. DPW is checking on our high priority areas, but please join them in checking your storm drains in your area and clean them if you can. In addition, if you have downed trees in your area or other storm debris or see a blocked drain, call 311. We are working through service requests as quickly as possible ahead of the next round of storms. We also encourage everyone to keep an eye out for traffic signals. If you approach a traffic signal that is out, treat it like a four-way stop sign and proceed once you are clear. Every single one of these precautions and tips is to ensure that everyone remains safe as we look ahead to this severe weather. There is always a risk for storms to occur, but we know that these storms are becoming more and more severe, more frequent, and more dangerous, and we battle the constant impact of the climate crises. But we want everyone to be safe, and this team will be working around the clock to monitor the exact path of the storm, and we are sharing our regular updates with the public and getting ready to respond via social media and avenues like this. With that, we will open it up for questions.
Start with Lee and then work our way back.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to get another comment from you. Yesterday, City Unions came out and said there's a culture of bullying at the Department of Public Works. gave a statement yesterday, you made some remarks, but I don't think you really touched on that. What do you make of this allegation of the culture of bullying?
Yeah, I think, Lee, I'll just start always when you're talking about this. First, I'm going to again extend my condolences to Mr. Silva's family and his DPW family. I had the opportunity to speak with them and opportunity to obviously spend time with our workers yesterday, as I often do. What we are talking about as we go through this investigation and everything else, and what you've heard from me time and time again, is changing cultures that have existed for a long time in DPW. I had the opportunity to talk with Councilman Glover at length because, as he will tell you, long before he was on the city council, when I was a freshman council member, I spent time with him and his folks in his yard, driving the street sweeper alongside him, and said that we have to start to do that work of changing that culture, of investing in those workers. And we're going to continue to do that. That's part of the reason why I brought Khalil back into city government, to make sure that we are changing every single thing. And I want this to be heard and heard very clearly. Anybody who's participating in treating our employees the wrong way or doing things like that, and we catch you, you will be held accountable. I know you know that I also spoke with President Patrick Moran yesterday. You know I have a great working relationship with the AFSCME union that will continue, and we're going to be doing this work together to do these things that have existed for far too long in city government and in DPW.
Good, Emily.
Specifically, is there more training that needs to be done to attack this culture of bullying and hazing that we're hearing about? Is it a matter of training our managers? Is it what actually needs to be done to invest in that?
Well, I think that a bunch of things has to happen. We have to always continue to increase training, right? But we also have to do some even tougher work, right? And we're talking about, I remember, Emily, when we talked about the water workers, and the first time that they were getting a significant raise in decades, right? We have to make sure that we're making those investments in the people as well. And when you talk about the money now that we've set aside for even the facilities, right? We're talking about Bowleys and Rebird and getting them new facilities. I think it's important to note that you're talking about when you have those kind of physical environments, when you have the kind of disinvestment in the people and the pay, when you have the disinvestment even in the fleet that we are now finally getting to address, right? Those are the kind of things that make a recipe for having all of those things, because the folks feel like they can treat people anyway because they're not being invested in at all. And that's why we've been focused on doing that. We're talking about getting those two facilities after I visited myself several years ago and saw how Bowleys looked and talked with the workers. We have to make sure that we're doing all of it. So it's not just the training. It's not just making sure that as Khalil and his team comes in that we weed out people who shouldn't be where they are and maybe in those positions for whatever reason, all right? But it's also about how we can invest in those people, in those workers, and inside of DPW, which we're going to continue to do.
You suggested yesterday in an interview with Tom Hall on YPR that perhaps maybe some of the work needs to change. Kind of stopped before you fully answered that question. What did you mean, and what would that look like?
Yeah, I'll say to you what I said to Tom yesterday. Out of respect for Mr. Silva, who is not yet buried yet, and out of respect for my working relationship with the union and the workers, I'm not ready to respond to that, but we'll be talking about that with them as we talk about what happens as we move in the future. Because I think what I will say is that we have to be reminded, as I talked about the severity of the storms, right, is that our temperatures in Baltimore are hotter now than they've ever been before, right? This is something, when you think about the amount of 100-degree plus heat index days we've had recently, that's not normal, and we have to look at everything.
Go, Kenzie.
Switching gears a little to the contract for the new MOED building. There's been some conversation about the level of vacancy, the vacancy rates in buildings across the city. And so why not take the $16 million and convert something that's already in place to house MOED instead of go down this contract route?
Well, I think, thank you for the question, Mackenzie. We are talking about building the first new city office building in over a decade in the city. And those who know MOED, right, know where MOED needs to be. You're talking about one, a agency that has to be in the community, right? This is not an agency that should be downtown because they're serving folks in the community, folks who are going there to try to get their job training, to get a job, right? I went there as a young man to get youth opportunity, to get a computer, to do college bound. These things should exist within those communities. But also, you're talking about going up against a $2 billion capital backlog that we have in DGS. And when you add on top of it that we're talking about, again, as I told you last week, replacing a place that was called Myrtle Mall for a neighborhood that has been destitute of investment for all of my life. I don't think the people in West Baltimore are going to be complaining about us giving money to build a new office building here, because as they would say, and as some of them said to me last week after they saw your story, that no one complained when we gave money to build Harbor East or Harbor Point or Baltimore Peninsula. We should treat West Baltimore the same.
Going back to DPW really quickly, if I could, I know that the governor has said that the state is launching an investigation into what happened here. When it comes to changing the work culture, do you anticipate working with the state at all as that investigation plays out, and perhaps leaning on the partnerships that you've touted with the governor's office to try and bring perhaps more resources here to help change this toxic work culture that we're learning about?
Well, I think that a couple things. One, as I know you know, the governor was talking about an automatic investigation that happens every time there's a workplace death like this in the state of Maryland. This isn't a quote-unquote abnormal thing, right? That the agency does that every time, and we're always going to work with our partners in the state in every way and make sure, as they are already partners in helping us to do this. I think the improvements that we're trying to make to the facilities, they're already bought in on that, and we're going to continue to work with them every day.
But are the facilities the problem with the work culture?
Everything is the problem, Mackenzie. I think that Emily just asked a question very similar. You're talking about a work environment, right? And it's not just the people. I think that we have to be very mindful, right? We're talking about workers who I talk to consistently, who do great work, who do work that most people won't do, right? Who have, as they say to me consistently, that this isn't about you, that we have not been invested in since, in some instances, a gentleman told me yesterday, since before Smoke was mayor, right? We're talking about facilities that go into place when you go to these places that are older than me and haven't been touched. All of it matters, which is why we have to look at this in its completeness, but also understand that this is going to be a big item that we have to work on every day. And for those of us who have been in the work, it'll just be amplified by the death of Mr. Silver, and we won't use his unfortunate death to say things that we shouldn't say or we wouldn't say before, but to really use that to highlight why it's important that we move forward.
Emily from RPR.
Hi, I'd like to know yesterday's training not being counted. What regular heat prevention and/or medical training was being given to workers before yesterday? As we've had these these code red heat days, were there refreshers given to specifically DPW workers? The question also stands for other city workers that work outside.
Yeah, we'll give you a direct follow-up. I will tell you that those trainings have been offered in the past, and we'll continue to do that throughout the city of Baltimore. We know that even from the city administrator herself, sending out notices to our agencies to remind folks, to let people know about the heat, extreme heats that we were expecting, and make sure that things were in place. And we're going to continue to do that as we look at every practice for our workers, as we again deal with the changing nature of our weather as a result of climate change. But Emily, we'll try to figure out, get with the HR department to figure out how many we've offered in the past and all of those things. But there's been lots and lots of them.
I would appreciate that. Thank you. Following up, municipalities and private trash and recycling corporations around the country have been alternating the way that they do business because of our changing climate, including high heat. That includes starting routes earlier. In DC, it's officially at 5 a.m. implementing, heat monitoring by supervisors, et cetera. Is Baltimore DPW in the process of doing something similarly and reworking policies for our changing climate?
As I said to your namesake, we're looking at all of those things, but we'll be talking with the folks in the labor union and others as we do that. We know that many of our crews actually go. Every time I've been to a DPW yard, it's been about at 5 o'clock in the morning. But I think everything we're going to be looking at every policy, every practice after we have an incident like this, much like we would do, as I said to someone, much like we would do if we had a line of duty death for a firefighter or a police officer. We're going to do the same thing for DPW with the loss of Mr. Silva.
Tally from WPL.
In June, you said that the charter amendment that's aimed at reducing the size of the city council, cutting it in half, and other charter amendments were aimed at reducing black political power. Now we've discovered that there's a ballot issue committee called Stop Sinclair, which has the express goal of opposing this initiative to cut the city council. Is this going to be the main public effort to oppose this ballot measure?
Well, yes, this is us, and I can't speak to other folks and what other people may or may not be doing, but what I said in June still rings true today, Tali. Like, we know what this is. We've seen this movie time and time again, and we want folks to know, our residents to know, that we want to preserve their democracy from influence from folks who just have a lot of money.
Your chief of staff and one of your top fundraisers are both linked to this Stop Sinclair ballot issue committee. Why not have their names expressly listed there? Why just have their addresses and their phone numbers?
Well, I think that, listen, when you make when folks make campaign decisions, they make them for whatever reason. But we'll be very clear that myself, members of the council, other folks are going to be fighting this, and we want people to know that we're fighting it because we are fighting folks who ability to create news, create ballot initiatives just because they have a lot of money, and that they can determine what happens in Baltimore even after they lose elections after backing candidates.
What's the coalition of power of support around this beyond the mayor's office? Are city council members supporting this?
There'll be lots of people supporting it, Tali, but we're talking about going into a fight that we're ready to have, and we will.
WNR.
There was a transgender woman who was found gunned down in an alleyway on Lambell on Sunday, and now the transgender community is coming out saying, when will someone hear us when we talk about how we're exposed to violence in the city? Are you aware of the incident, and are you aware of the ongoing problem that the community faces?
Well, I think, yes, I am aware of the incident. And the police commissioner spoke a few hours after the incident, and we know, as we always say, for me, everybody, I don't care who you are in the city of Baltimore, we care about you and don't want you to be a victim of violence. And we're going to make sure, just like every single homicide case that we have in the city, every non-fatal shooting that we have in the city, that the women and men and BPD track those people down and do their due diligence. And we're going to continue to work alongside the community, the LGBTQ plus community, to make sure that we're doing everything to protect them, just as we do everybody else in the city of Baltimore. For me, it does not matter. We know that we've had 14-year-olds, we've had older folks killed in the city. Every single body, every single person, individual in the city of Baltimore, lives matters to me.
Is there a cultural or educational element to this that needs to be addressed?
Well, you hear me say this all the time. Like, we have to deal with the culture of violence, period, right? And within that culture of violence, obviously, there's subcultures of violence that you have, whether it be with young people, against women, against members of the LGBTQ plus community. But this is what you hear me talking about when you talk about that culture of violence, and we have to think about that in its completeness for everybody in the city of Baltimore, including members of the transgender community.
WGT.
Mr. Mayor, in the police-involved shooting of 17-year-old Will Gardner, the family is calling for the release of the body cam footage and more information. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, you know that there's a process for that. We've been working alongside the Attorney General's office. We know that will be released, and that will be done in due time, but we will be releasing it as we always do. Yes, sir.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Can
you.
you just weigh in on the bonus charter amendments in court today for the baby bonus?
It's in court, Mackenzie. You know I can't do that.